All right, I want to be cognizant of everybody's time here, so I'm hoping everybody we need on is on. And I'm going to present my desktop so you can see the agenda here. So the agenda today has some quick hitter items, and then along with those, then we've got some discussion items. So we met yesterday, and we decided to break the agenda up a little bit differently, which is why you saw that the video from me today about how to get to the agenda, and we'll just keep a running agenda in here now. So the quick hitter stuff we'll put on top, and then the things that we want feedback from buildings you'll see down at the bottom, and we put check boxes there so you know that, okay, this is something we're looking for some feedback from the buildings on. So real quick, some of the quick hitter items before we get into those are iPads going out to buildings. Every elementary building is getting 6 of those iPads shipped back to them. So they're not all out yet, but they should be out this week. So expect 6 more iPads coming into your building, and you guys can choose how to use those or what you want to do with them. Can you watch the chat too for me, just in case anything comes in? We shared some info with your principals on tickets and how tickets are being entered and how many tickets are in. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but if you want to see that, you can definitely talk to your principal and see what your building looks like. The good news is we actually were down on the break fix, the hardware side, about 20 tickets this year compared to last. The thing that I reminded principals is we rolled out a lot of new computers, new a phone system, new systems, stuff like that. But we also, if you look at last year's tickets, we had a lot of keyboards that were bad or missing keys after the summer started. And we just didn't have those tickets because we had newer machines. The downside for us is on the data side. The does support with data. We were up about 1,100 tickets because of online student verification and parents forgetting their username and password. So we had a lot of calls this year supporting that. We also, when we did that, we showed the percentage that were coming in with the template. So hopefully everybody knows about the MTM and the template that's in the MTM for putting in tickets. So your principal will have that number for the first 6 weeks of school, how many were put in with the template and how many weren't put in with the template. The thing I told principals is that template is not, it's not like every ticket should come in on that template. We get that there are times that it doesn't make any sense to use the template. So we're never going to expect to be at 100% usage on that template. We would just like to see that number go up. We get really good information from that template. Something as silly as like room number. A lot of times we get tickets put in that Mrs. Smith's room is having problems, but we don't know who Mrs. Smith is. So we wander the building looking for Mrs. Smith. So just getting a room number is helpful for our techs. All right, some other things here. We've had some tickets come in about the Office 365 desktop icon. So if you use that icon that we've pushed out for your students to log into Office 365, the downside of that is even if they log out, the next student who logs in sometimes sees the first student stuff. So we are going to start pushing that icon out this week in something called private browsing or incognito mode, so that as soon as you close it, it wipes away every instance of the last student. So you should not have that issue anymore. The key is you're going to want to use that desktop icon. So if people are still going down to start and opening it up fresh, that's not going to be in private browsing. So you're going to want to make sure you use that desktop icon. The other thing that we're looking at pushing out after we've done it this year is, after we've started the year, is we're not getting the computers. The computers are going to sleep just constantly. They're not actually going into hibernate or any other sort of mode. So we're looking at changing the power settings and forcing those out to the student computers at the elementary only, so that if we've got 2 options here, and maybe this is something buildings can discuss and give us feedback, but what we recommend for teachers right now is if they hit the power button, it goes hibernate, and then if they just shut the lid, it goes to sleep. So one option is we do the same thing for student machines. The other option is we just always hibernate it. Let me give you the reason why we would hibernate it. when you just shut the lid, it stays connected to wireless. So even if it's not being used, it's in the cart connected to wireless, which during map testing we noticed was getting to be a little bit of an inconvenience because we had so many computers connected to wireless, and if you hibernate it, it shuts down that connection. The other thing is if you keep it in a cart and it's connected to wireless and then you take that to a room, it takes some time for it to connect to the new access point in that room. Whereas if it's hibernated and it comes into that room and you wake it up, it will connect to that access point that's in the room. It won't try to connect to the one in the room next door, for instance. So we think we can overcome some of that by doing hibernate. One suggestion was to just always hibernate, even when you shut the lid. I think that may make sense because students are in such a mindset to just shut the mindset, always hibernate those. So that's kind of what we're looking at with that, with the power settings. And then dongles, just a reminder that we sent dongles out. Hopefully every building got those. The feedback we're getting is pretty good about, yeah, I try wireless, and if it doesn't work, I go to dongle. But the nice thing is if every other room's using a dongle, probably every other room can use wireless. So it's kind of opened up that wireless spectrum for the video stuff a little bit. So times that you do want to use wireless, it's more available if the room next door is using the dongle, which is helpful. And then set up Outlook accounts. Oh, yes, I'm glad Anna added this. I just talked to a principal today. This is just a reminder that if you use Sims to send out parent emails, you have to have Outlook open. I just had a teacher put in a ticket today, and after reading it, she said, I'm using Firefox to send them. Well, they don't go through Firefox, so it sat there over the weekend, and then she opened up Outlook yesterday morning, and all the emails from last Friday went out. So just a reminder that make sure you're using Outlook if you're using that link in Sims to send your newsletters. So, all right, any questions about those big hitters or anything? Oh, that's a good point. I had forgotten about that. Okay, so what Caitlin's talking about here is Windows 10 has something called Microsoft Mail on it, and it is possible for Mail to take over as the default program of your computer, and you don't realize that it's happened. So we probably I need to check to see if if it's in the MTM on how to switch your default back to Outlook and how to make sure it's Outlook. Every once in a while I hear from teachers who say they like Microsoft Mail better. We're currently not supporting that, but if it's not causing you any issues, I'm not losing any sleep over it. If you are having problems, we always recommend going back to Outlook, and I probably need to check to see if there's anything in the MTM about making sure your Outlook's your default client there. So, anything coming in on chat? Anything we need to? So that's a great question. So when you go to sleep, it basically shuts off the screen, but your computer's still running. It's still doing all the stuff in the background. It used to be that we didn't like sleep because we had spinning hard drives, and so if you put it in the cart, there was a lot of heat there, and we were trying to avoid fires. But now with the hard drives we have very little heat, so you could sleep it all the time and it wouldn't be an issue. Hibernate shuts off the hard drive, shuts off a lot of those internal components. It doesn't turn off the computer completely, but it still takes 60 seconds for it to get back to the point where you're in the computer working again. So it's a little bit longer to get back in than sleep is. Sleep goes very quickly. And just a reminder, as long as we're on power settings, one of the things we noticed, Maps was an interesting time for us. We noticed that computers aren't getting shut down. We do recommend shutting down computers once a week, and we think students can do that. Friday afternoon, the last people to have the cart, make sure your students shut down those computers. We push the Maps testing out at login. So you had to actually get logged into the computer. And if it was always sleeping, then they never got logged in and maps never installed. So I know that that was an issue at a number of buildings, but it's just it probably makes a lot of sense on Friday afternoons. Let's just shut down the computers and bring them back up Monday morning. Anything else from there, Anna?
No, they wanted to know how to set it to hibernate, but if you're pushing out the power settings.
Yep, that's nothing we'll ask anybody to do. We'll push those out as long as we can get agreement. And I think my recommendation right now, after some conversations with Anna, would be that we just set it to hibernate even when the screen closes. If that causes major problems for everybody, then we can look at hibernate on hitting the power button and sleep when you close the lid. You just got to let me know what works for you, and maybe I should have put that in building discussion items so you can let us know. But we won't make any change there until the end of this week, so you have a little bit of time to give us whatever feedback you have on that. All right, now to go down to the building discussion items. So first one that we want buildings to kind of talk about is hopefully the MTM is getting used. Hopefully teachers have found it useful. We're starting to get more questions about, hey, I'd like to add this into the MTM. I'd like more information about this put into the MTM. And we don't really have a process for adding stuff to the MTM. So we just want buildings to kind of discuss what other things should be in the MTM. Can we make a list and kind of bring that together so Anna and Caitlin and I and Aaron and whoever else who works on putting those documents together can kind of take a look at that and say, oh yeah, we definitely need to get this information in there. So kind of having just a quick conversation after we're done or whenever you guys get back to meet about what makes sense for that and what you'd like to see.
But I think also there are a lot of buildings who are creating their own videos or handouts or other things that are really helpful. If you have something that's helpful that would work for other buildings too, please send it our way and we can add that to the MTM.
Yeah, absolutely. If for those who didn't hear what Anna said, if you've got documentation that you've built for your building, send that to us because if it's something that applies district-wide, it's very easy for us to put that in there and why reinvent the wheel if you guys have already done that. So, all right, next item. This is a little bit bigger item, and that is the role of the TAT team. We've started to get some feedback, and actually why we put this on here, this was a topic at the principals meeting last week. And what we're finding is that we started these TAT teams, or I shouldn't say we started them, we kind of brought the TAT teams back because not every building had them, but we didn't have a lot of guidance as to what a TAT team looks like, what a TAT team does, what the objectives are of a TAT team. And so we've got some questions in there that we want the buildings to kind of talk about. First of all, what work are you being asked to do to support technology in your building? I want everybody to know that our goal for these TAT teams was not to put a bunch of work back on teachers. Our goal with these TAT teams was to say, how can we be as efficient as possible? There are things that happen in the building that can usually be handled very quickly, and does it make sense to wait for somebody from central office to get out there 2 days later? So we're curious about what buildings are being asked to do, and what we're finding is that different buildings have different levels of maybe frustration with this. I think some TAT teams are maybe being asked to do more than other TAT teams are doing. So we don't have a very good handle right now on what duties or what things TAT teams are being expected to do. So we want to try to get that from buildings and see what kind of requests you're getting internally. Of those items, what tasks do you think should be part of the TAT team, and what things do you think should fall on somebody else? And if you got an idea on who that somebody else should be, we'd love to hear that too. You know, if you think, well, that should be a technology issue, or that should be a coach issue, or whatever. We'd love to get feedback on whose role the TAT team see that being. One of the things we've noticed, we've been using that TAT group. I've moved on to the third question here. We've been using that TAT group, email group, to send out notifications. And what we're finding out is those notifications always aren't getting out to every teacher. So what is the best way for us to communicate with teachers? I've tried emails out to all staff around the district, and sometimes people um, don't always get that information either. So we're looking for the best way for us to communicate out to buildings so that people can get that information, and um, things aren't falling through the cracks when it comes to communication. And then the fourth item, what should support look like when new technology or new district technology initiatives roll out? I know that this has been a frustration for the last couple of years. We have done a lot. Well, we've done a lot in the 9 years I've been here, but the last 3 years have been really intense as you look at Office 365 and some of the collaboration tools we've used and stuff. And I understand that for people who don't live and breathe this stuff, it may be too fast. And then we, on the other side, we get from people saying, "Oh no, I want more. I want to be able to do more with this." So, what is what does your building think those new initiative rollouts should look like, and how can we support those initiatives when they get rolled out so that you get as much out of those as possible?
So one of my questions is, once they have this feedback, where should they send in information?
Yeah, why don't we send one in per building and just send it to Anna and I, and we'll distribute it. She'll work with the coaches to get the information, and I'll work with my team, and we'll kind of pull it back together at a meeting at some point. So once you get that, just send it to the two of us, and we will kind of put it all together. And we'll take. Don't be afraid to tell us. You know, the fierce conversation rule. I can take anything, and feel free to say that. That constructive feedback will lead to positive changes, hopefully. So don't be afraid to get that out there, and we won't share any names at a TAT team meeting with, well, um, Parkview Heights said this, and I'm just picking on them because I'm out here, but we won't. We'll keep all of that private to ourselves there. So anything else from there? All right. The last thing we want to talk about, speaking of new initiatives, this is an initiative that we are going to start, but it's a very low pressure initiative. Microsoft Office 365 has something called groups. And Prairie Queen, we've got 2 or 3 buildings in the district, and Prairie Queen is one of them. The idea behind a group is it's a central location to store documents, it's also an email group. So this TAT team is an Office 365 group. The reason that we like groups is because right now every building still has a building server with a staff share on that server. And a lot of those staff shares, and nobody has to point fingers at anybody, we've got a lot of staff shares that have files on them that haven't been accessed since 2005. And we're still backing those files up. We're still maintaining those files on a regular basis. So the great thing about groups is it allows us to put it in the cloud where we have unlimited storage essentially, and B, you can access those files from anywhere. Right now, if you have something in the staff share, you actually have to come into the district to get to those files. So if we get those to a group, you would be able to get to those from anywhere in the world, any files you wanted to work on. Unlike OneDrive, we will be able to move those files for you. OneDrive, everybody moved their own files. Here, the idea would be we'll create a group. When you say you're ready to move files, we can move those files into the group for you. And then somebody in your building can be owner of that group and can kind of manage how that group works. So I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin, and let's see if I can give you control here, Caitlin. Uh, oh, I was going to try and get alphabetical order. You know what? Let me wonder if I can present your screen. Oh, was it going for you? Okay.
that might sway how you find groups as well, much as you found the Tat Meeting group right here. And just a reminder, you go up to the app launcher or the waffle. You can either get to two people, or you can access it through OneDrive.
Can you hear me? All right, great. So going back to groups right now, if you go to the waffle, I went and clicked on the people tab. Sorry about that. You can also access it through OneDrive or anything else, and you will see it. 1 second. On the left-hand side, you should see all of your groups. And so I'm going to share what Prairie Queen did with all of their staff files and their staff OneNotes. We kind of all put it in our group. So here's Prairie Queen's group right here. So if I click on it, it will go ahead and open. It will usually open up to the files. So here is where all of our traditional shared files are. And we went ahead and uploaded it to the group. So everyone can access this, and you can see over here that it's all the members that can see all the staff shared. So again, this is online, it's off servers, you can get to it from home. And then the other piece that we have is we have a shared notebook or OneNote. So the other way that I can get to my notebook is if I go to conversation. So if that doesn't work for you, that little link, which I've had some issues with that, and you should see notebook right here. And then it will go ahead and load if you're having that issue as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and open it in OneNote. And once I do this, it will sit on my bookshelf, so I don't have to ever do this again. You'll see that as a staff, we moved all of our OneNotes for TAT teams and SIP teams and PBIS and other documents all to one OneNote that is under the shared group so everyone can access it. And then it gave us a place to find everything in our building.
So that's the gist of groups right there. We did have a question come in from Liz asking about a desktop version. Office 2016 does have groups built in, although you can't get to the files directly. It just takes you out to the web piece to get to the files. So that's a little bit different. Oh, yeah. So the advantages, if you put stuff in OneDrive, you're still the owner of that OneDrive. So if teacher A puts all the building stuff in OneDrive and then 5 years later leaves, when we delete that teacher's account, all of the stuff that they shared out of their OneDrive is going with them. Whereas when you put it in groups, everybody's the owner essentially. Everybody can add stuff to that, but everybody can take stuff away, and so it's shared from that standpoint, which I think was one of the things that we missed a little bit when we first rolled out OneDrive. We had a lot of people sharing everything, in fact, including stuff that was going into curriculum guides, and then if the teacher left, those links no longer work. So that's one of those things we've learned over time. We just weren't expecting it. But that's kind of why you'd want to use groups there. So I got a question about who sets up the group. So the way this is going to work is we're going to set up groups for every building. My goal is to have every building's group set up by the 1st of November. with the idea that you would need to tell us who you want to be owner of that group. And you can have multiple owners. So like Caitlin's the owner of the Prairie Queen group. Is anybody else the owner, or is it just you? So right now, Caitlin's the only owner at Prairie Queen, but you could have 3 or 4 teachers who are the owners, and then everybody else would be a member of that group. And they can view files, do all that, but they can't add members to the group. They can't do any of that kind of stuff. The other thing it does is that becomes an email group. So you no longer would have to wait on technology to add a new employee into the email group. You guys would have the power to do that yourselves for that group.
The long enough notice, of course, that they'll have to add another people.
Right.
On everybody looking at it.
Yeah. So Anna's point right there is, so I spun that as, hey, good news, you can control it yourself and don't have to wait on us. The bad news is the control then falls back on you. So in August, if you want somebody in that group, a new teacher or whatever, the owner would have to go in and add those teachers. It's a very quick process to add members to a group. It takes, 10 seconds per group member. So it's nothing that takes a long time to do. All right, we're coming up on the half an hour. Are there other questions before we get off of the Skype call? And I know some of you might want to have some of those conversations yet this afternoon. But are there anything else I can answer before we let this go?
Matt asked you from our school and set up the group. So just to clarify, you're going to set them up, but we can have multiple people working.
Yes. So if you couldn't hear Anna, the thought here is we'll set up the groups. There's nothing for you to do. When you guys say, hey, we want to try groups, we want to get our stuff off of the server, you would just put in a ticket with us who you want to be the owners of the group and when you want those files moved, and then we'll move those files. It probably won't be one of those things where you can say, move the files Thursday afternoon at 2. It's going to take us some time to move those files. One of the other things I'm going to encourage is before we move those files, you might want to, as a TAT team, sit down and look at what files are out there. If you've got, hundreds of old AppleWorks documents, it might be worth deleting those. We may not want to move those up to Office 365 group. So now would be a time to maybe weed some of that out. Or if you want to say, hey, only move the stuff that's been modified in the last year, I can sort by year and just take the stuff that's been there for a year. And as soon as we're done, then we'll turn off the staff share, and you would have to be ready to let your staff know how that works.
We have a couple questions about the benefit of groups over OneNote. Do you happen to have that visual?
I don't on me, but Anna created a great visual for groups, how this all ties together. Groups, OneDrive, OneNote, and we shared it at a coaches meeting a couple weeks ago. And it was like a light bulb for a lot of the coaches. They said, oh, I now get how these things all tie together. So we'll look for that and maybe just send that out to the whole TAC team so you can see what that looks like. So I see one here from Olivia about what has the consensus been about using the dongles versus wireless. I don't know if we have a consensus. The rooms I have been in, the dongles work. It's much smoother, although you lose a lot of flexibility. I have heard from a couple people that say their wireless adapters are more reliable over the last couple weeks, and I think the reason they're more reliable is because we have more people plugged in, so we don't have that interference problem. But I don't know. I don't have a great answer to that question.
We had some people mention that with the we've had teachers mention that with the wireless, the screen was a little bit smaller and not quite as bright, and the resolution wasn't quite as clear. When you go back to the dongle, it's just like it was when you were plugging directly into the projector. So that clarity and the size and the resolution will be back to what we were used to in previous years.
Tim just said that they have a question from Portal, so I'm going to wait a second here to see what question portal has. So the question from Portal, they want to know why it's a TAT team. The T is redundant. Because TAT team was developed before I got here, so I don't have to take blame. No, that's a very good question, and we should just call it the TAT.
You say it really fast, it's almost like the TAT team.
The TAT team? I like that. Maybe we just do TAT team. I don't have a great answer for that. I apologize. I'll come up with one, though. All right. Thank you guys for jumping on. Our next meeting, I think. Oh, I like that. Maybe we change it. Teachers assisting teachers team. That way we can call it a TAT team. So sleep on that, and we'll come back next month to that question. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll send a meeting invite out for the November meeting. I don't think we have any conflicts with conferences next month, so we'll go back to the originally scheduled programming. Thanks, everyone.